The millionaire shocks everyone after seeing a homeless man embrace an autistic boy. James Carlton sat alone in his sleek Manhattan office. Outside, the city was roaring, horns blaring, voices shouting, the usual rush of people weaving through autumn's biting chill. Leaves spun lazily down the sidewalk like forgotten memories. He tapped his fingers against the glass, his sharp mind racing through numbers and deals, a storm of stress tightening his chest. This was his world, cold, controlled, built on steel nerves and sharper instincts. Then, something caught his eye. Amid the sea of tailored suits and bemused tourists, a figure stood out, a homeless man, ragged and unsteady, clutching a small boy close. The boy wasn't like the others. His slow movements, the way his eyes flickered away, told a silent story. He was autistic. The man's arms wrapped around him like a shield, gentle and protective. Despite the dirt smudging his boy's small hand twitched nervously, but the man's voice, a shaky whisper, was calm, soothing. Around them, the city surged forward, feet pounding pavement, coffee carts steaming, taxis honking aggressively. But none noticed. None seemed to care. A woman nearby glanced once, then looked away with a grimace. A suited man scoffed under his breath, pulling his coat tighter. Voices buzzed. What are they doing here? This isn't the place. But the boy and the man stayed locked in their fragile embrace, a silent island in a storm. James's chest tightened. Why were they together? How did this strange bond survive the cold streets, the hunger, the endless struggle? The questions crashed, sharp and relentless. He felt his usual detachment cracking, the armor creaking. Something was stalling inside him. Something raw, real, urgent. Then it happened. The boy lifted his head slowly. Their eyes met. There was a spark. No, a flash, like he saw something deep within James. Something James had never dared look at himself. The connection held for a long, heart-pounding moment. No words, no movement, just two souls reaching out from opposite worlds. The city continued its pulse, relentless and indifferent around them. But for James, the air had changed. His hands trembled ever so slightly. The screen of his business world blurred. He didn't know what to feel yet, or what to do next. All he knew was that this unpredictable, broken, beautiful moment had shattered something inside him, and nothing would be the same. Hey, before we continue with this amazing story, I need to give you an important heads up. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube removed their subscriptions without warning. Just quickly check that red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I don't want you to miss any exclusive content coming your way. And while you're at it, leave that powerful like. It helps me a lot with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, what city are you watching from? I love getting to know each incredible person who is part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's interact. The boy's eyes held James in a steady gaze, deep, searching, almost like a silent plea. His small hand twitched again, but this time James saw something else. Recognition. Not just from the boy, but from the man beside him, too. The homeless man's ragged coat flapped in the cold breeze as he whispered softly, words James couldn't hear, but somehow felt. James's breath caught. The chaos of the city seemed to slow, the noise falling away, until only the faint rustle of leaves stirred the silence between them. Then, suddenly, the man's fingers brushed against the boy's cheek. But instead of rough skin, James saw a gleam. Shiny, cold, the flash of a broken glass shard pressed just beneath the surface. The boy flinched, but the man's eyes darkened with something fierce, almost desperate. James's heart lurched. A passerby screamed. James snapped to reality. The homeless man pulled the boy tighter, but then, without warning, shoved him hard into the arms of a sharp-suited woman steppin'. The boy stumbled, eyes wide. Then a terrible truth slammed into James like a freight train. The woman, her face pale, combed hair perfect, looked not shocked or scared, but wary. She stepped back quickly, clutching the boy's arm as if he was a stranger. Their eyes met. Recognition exploded. "Mom?" the boy whispered, voice trembling. James blinked, furious confusion smashing inside him. "No, no," the woman said stiffly, shaking her head as if to erase the name. "You don't know me." But the boy's fingers dug into her coat like a lifeline. Then the homeless man's face twisted, not in sadness, but menacing rage. Suddenly, he yanked something from beneath his coat, a crumpled, stained photo, tossed it into James's line of sight. James caught it midair. His blood froze. The picture was unmistakable. A young woman with the boy, smiling, but behind her eyes, something James couldn't explain. And there, barely visible in the background, the homeless man, but his eyes, so familiar, too familiar. James's hands trembled violently. The man's ragged voice rang out, cracked but furious. "You think I'm just a lost soul? I'm the only one who could protect him. From her." Around them, the crowd grew thick with whispers, gasps, phones raised, eyebrows knitted in horror or disbelief. James stared at the scene, heart shattering into jagged pieces. The boy? Not just autistic, not just abandoned, caught in a storm he never understood. The homeless man's eyes surged with a bitter fire. "I tried to save him from the world he came from," he spat, voice rising. "From the lies." Before James could speak, the woman's voice cut through like ice. "You're lying. He belongs with me. We are his family." But the boy only whimpered, caught trembling between them. James's mind scrambled, trying to piece the shards of this nightmare. The man's rage, the woman's cold claim, the boy's fragile silence. No, this wasn't a simple moment of kindness. It was a war hiding in plain sight. And James, rooted frozen, knew this was just the beginning. But why did his chest feel like it was about to break open? Who was really protecting whom? And what was the secret that none of them could afford to speak aloud? The city buzzed on, indifferent and uncaring. But for James, the truth had exploded, and nothing would ever be the same again. James stood frozen, heart pounding like a trapped drum. The street throbbed with noise, honking horns, shouting debates, hurried footsteps. But around him, the world narrowed to the shivering boy, the furious man, and the cold woman. Then the homeless man's voice broke through, trembling but sharp. "You don't know what they did, what they took from us." His eyes burned with a desperate fire that didn't belong in the dirty streets. The woman's jaw tightened. "Enough! He belongs with me!" End of story. James's breath caught in a painful squeeze. Something about the man's face twisted in rage. But then, suddenly, his expression cracked. His shoulders sagged under a weight James hadn't seen yet. Without warning, the man pulled something from his pocket, a worn, folding knife. The blade caught the afternoon light, gleaming cold and real. Gasps exploded around them. Phones dropped. People stepped back, eyes wide and frozen. But then, James watched, paralyzed. The boy suddenly shifted. His trembling hands shot out, grabbing the man's wrist with an iron grip. The boy's eyes weren't just scared. They were focused, sharper than before. "No," he whispered, voice stronger than expected. "Stop." The man froze, surprise twisting his face. Then something James never saw coming happened. The man's hand dropped. His eyes lost the fire. They dimmed, flickered, and then he looked right at James. A slow, painful smile spread across his cracked lips. "I'm not who you think I am," he said, voice low. "None of this is what it seems." James blinked as shock ripped through him. Before anyone could react, sirens cut through the chaos. Police cars skidded around corners, blue and red flashing like warning fires. The woman stepped forward, voice loud with authority. "This man's dangerous. He's been reported for kidnapping." James's mind spiraled. Kidnapping? But the boy's whisper, his grip, said truth flipped upside down. Then the man laughed, a hollow, broken sound. "Kidnap? No. He's my son, and I'm the only one who kept him alive." James's throat tightened. Something inside him cracked open, raw and trembling. The crowd closed in. But James's attention snapped to the man's next words. "Look at this." His trembling fingers unfolded another photo. It showed the boy, but also someone else. Someone James recognized and hadn't expected. Himself. In the picture, James was standing beside the boy, smiling, arms wrapped around the child. A scene James never remembered living. James's world flipped. "James?" The man's eyes burned into his own. "You promised, long ago." James's knees nearly gave out. A cold sweat broke across his skin. This wasn't just a stranger's fight. This was his fight, his secret. The woman's face paled. "That's impossible. You don't know this boy." But the boy's hand gripped James's coat now. No hesitation. His eyes shone with something James would never forget. Recognition. Family. Suddenly, all around them, the city felt far away. Its noise, its judgment, its cold indifference. James realized he wasn't the observer. He was part of the storm, too. But what had he really forgotten? And what truth had been lurking beneath his polished life? Buried so deep, he shoved it away? The homeless man reached into his coat again. But this time, he pulled out more than a photo. He pulled out a small, faded envelope. Handing it to James, his voice barely a whisper. "Open it." James's fingers trembled as he tore it open. Inside was a single piece of paper, typed but stained, words smudged by time, and at the bottom, a signature he never expected to see. James's breath hitched. The letter wasn't just about the boy. It named James, blamed James for everything, for the lies, the broken promises, the hidden horrors. The crowd fell silent, the air thick with fear and disbelief. James looked up, his hands shaking, the boy clutching him tight, and knew one thing. Nothing, not a single thing, was what it seemed. And the truth? It was about to destroy everything. James's hands shook as he stared at the letter. The cruel words scrawled like acid, blaming him for betrayals he buried deep. The crowd held its breath, eyes darting between the ragged man, the sharp woman, and the frozen millionaire caught in the middle. His chest tightened, a heavy stone pressing down. The boy clung to James's coat now, his small fingers digging in like a lifeline. James glanced down, those searching eyes, filled with a fragile hope, pierced him in ways money and power never could. Then, the homeless man stepped closer, voice low, urgent. "You don't see it yet. But there's more. The mask is coming off." Before James could ask what he meant, the man's gaze snapped over the crowd. Wide, wild. Suddenly, a sharp crack echoed. Everyone jumped. Heads spun toward the noise. A loud pop. Smoke rose like a deadly mist from a nearby alley. People screamed, stumbled back. James's heart slammed. Out of the haze, two armed men burst forward. Black masks, urgent shouts, grabbing the boy right from James's arms before anyone could react. The boy's terrified scream cut through the chaos. "No!" James shouted. The ragged man lunged, hands clawing desperately, but one of the attackers shoved him aside with brutal force. James tried to move, but his legs felt rooted. His breath caught. The woman gasped, eyes wide in shock, her earlier coldness replaced with raw panic. The crowd scattered as police sirens grew closer, but the kidnappers vanished back into the mist. James collapsed onto the sidewalk, pounding chest, burning, tears stinging. His fingers trembled. Empty now. The homeless man was on his knees beside him, shaking his head in disbelief. They came for him, for the boy, for all of it, he rasped. James's ears rang with the falling silence. Then, out of the quiet, a voice, soft, brittle, cut through. James. He turned sharply. The woman stood not far off, face pale, eyes flooded with something new. Fear, truth, confession. I need to tell you everything, but not here. James swallowed hard. Who are they? What do they want? She breathed deeply. They're not just after the boy, or you. They're after the secret you buried, the one you erased. James stared. His mind spun. He felt a cold hand curl around his heart. Then, a sudden sharp cry from behind startled them both. James whipped around. The boy's small hand was clutched tightly by one of the kidnappers, but twisted strangely, almost like the boy was holding on because he wanted to stay. A twisted, empty smile flickered briefly on the kidnapper's lips. Then, in a voice as chilling as ice breaking, the homeless man spoke. You think this is a simple rescue? You've all been living a lie. The boy, the man, he's not just lost. He's connected to you, James, to everything you fear. James's breath caught. The woman stepped closer, her voice breaking. We lied to protect him, to protect you. Protect me? James echoed, senseless. Before his mind could catch up, the homeless man's stare drilled into his soul. Look closer. Look harder. You don't just know this boy. James's heart stopped. He looked down at the boy again. The child blinked, and for a moment, his eyes weren't afraid. They were different, older, sharper. And then, a voice, not the boy's, but layered, strange, escaped the child's lips. Hello, Dad. The crowd froze. James's world shattered again. The boy's small face twisted suddenly, and in a voice cold and cruel, he added, It's time you remembered who I really am. James's knees buckled. The street around him blurred and then cracked like shattered glass. His own reflection stared back at him, not from the glass walls of his office, but from the face of the child who called him Dad. The man who had appeared homeless, the protector, was not what he seemed. The woman claiming to be mother wasn't either. And the boy, he wasn't just a boy. Something ancient, something dangerous, something buried beneath lies and shadows was waking up. And James, he wasn't the hero anymore. He was the key. But to what? The city's noise returned, sharper now, more menacing. James's hands clenched tight. His throat was raw. The question that no one could answer hung heavy in the freezing air. Who and what had James really been protecting all along? James's knees gave way, and he dropped to the cracked pavement like the world had ripped beneath him. The crowd's gasps turned sharp, like blades slicing through the freezing air. The boy's voice echoed, cold and strangely heavy. It's time you remembered who I really am. His chest burned, every breath a stab. The noise of the city faded. Faces blurred. Only the boy's eyes held focus. Dark, unreadable, ancient. The homeless man's ragged coat flapped in the wind. His gaze locked on James, raw and fierce. The woman's lips trembled, dread crawling across her pale skin. James barely heard the murder of silence before the snap. A sharp crack splitting the air, heads whipped toward the roar. A sudden blast tore through the crowd, shaking the street like thunder hitting the bones. Smoke burst from the alleyway beside them, a fiery mess of sparks and choking dust. People screamed, stumbling backward. Some covered their ears, others pressed faces to trembling hands. The boy's head jerked violently, as if caught in an unseen storm. James looked down, his breath hitched. The child's skin split at the temples like cracked porcelain. From beneath the thin flesh, something dark, glowing, began to pulse, a cruel, unnatural light bleeding through. The boy's eyes flared, bright amber, flickering steadily like dying embers. No longer a boy, something monstrous. The homeless man's ragged form straightened, voice snapping through the chaos like a whip. It's him, the real him. His hand shot out, clutching the boy's face with trembling, desperate strength. "You're not what they say," the woman screamed, stepping forward, hand trembling as she reached inside her coat. But before she could draw whatever weapon was hidden, the boy's head snapped toward her, lips curling in an unnatural grin, teeth sharpened beyond reason. The crowd shrank back, fear blooming in every eye. Phones dropped, some still recording the nightmare unfolding. James's heart thundered. His hands shook. Sweat stung his eyes. The boy whispered, no, hissed, words that crawled down James's spine colder than ice. "You forgot, Dad. You buried me under your lies." Suddenly, the boy's body jolted violently. The glowing beneath his skin flared bright and shattered, sending shards of light cracking the pavement in all directions. Then, with a sound like shattering glass, the boy dissolved. No, transformed. Where moments ago stood a trembling child, now rose a tall, imperious figure, eyes blazing amber, skin crackling with dark energy. The man who had been a child was something else entirely, a living storm wrapped in shadows. James stumbled back, face pale, mind racing. The homeless man fell beside him, no longer ragged, but pristine and strong, as if peeled away from some dark disguise. His voice was smooth, commanding. You needed to see the truth. He wasn't a boy. He was the key to everything. The woman's knees buckled, her screams lost in the roar of the unleashed power. Then, the transformed boy, no, creature, turned to James. With slow, deadly calm, he said, "You didn't lose him. You never had him. You created this to bury your guilt." James's blood ran cold. The crowd's shock shifted into a tense, suffocating hush. James tried to speak, but his voice cracked. His fingers tangled in the torn coat the boy had clung to moments before. "I'm your son," the creature said, voice dripping with venom. "But not the son you remember. I am the shadow you carried, the nightmare you ran from. Suddenly, the streetlights flickered, plunging the square into almost complete darkness, save for the eerie glow from the creature's skin. And then, from the depths of the shadows, another figure stepped forward, tall, silent, familiar. James's breath caught. It was him, but not as he was now, with his clean lines and cold steel nerves. This version of James was older, worn, eyes hollow, face etched with despair. The crowd gasped, confused murmurs rising. The two Jameses locked eyes. "I'm the one who knows," the older James whispered. The boy creature laughed, a sound like grinding glass. "You can't escape yourself, son." The younger James's hands clenched into fists. The crowd watched, frozen, as the price of secrets exploded in front of them. The question hung heavy in the air, dark as the deep night. Who was the real James? And what nightmare was buried inside them both? The crowd's breath hitched, frozen in place. Two Jameses, same face, same haunted eyes, stood locked in a silent, terrible standoff. The air thickened. The city noise shrank to a distant hum, like water rushing underwater. Then, the creature boy's voice sliced through. "You can't run from yourself, Dad. I'm the shadow you buried." The younger James's fists clenched tight. His jaw trembled. Suddenly, the older James stepped forward, slow, deliberate. His voice cracked, but commanded. "You think this is real? This moment? None of it's true." Eyes widened. The crowd murmured, confused, conflicted. Before anyone could blink, the air around them shivered. A high-pitched crackle, like glass breaking on ice. The boy creature blinked. The city's static noise warped into a strange, hollow silence. Then, a blinding white light roared from behind the older James. The crowd gasped. Heads ducked. When the light faded, the older James was gone. In his place stood a woman. Young, fierce, eyes burned electric blue. She clenched a small device in her palm. Still humming with power, the younger James stared, mouth hanging open. The creature boy's face twisted in shock, then rage. Who? The woman's voice was cold, sharp as a knife. "I'm the one who's been pulling the strings." She stepped forward, and the world seemed to slow. Her gaze snapped to the younger James. "You think you know what happened? Who you are? What's real?" Her words hit like punches. "None of this," she said, "was your memory. That boy's not your son. And that man, the homeless one, you never met him, because none of you ever existed." Voices around them choked. The woman paused, eyes locked on the terrified boy creature. "You're a glitch, an experiment, a shadow projected by his mind, trying to fix what you broke." The creature snarled, claws stretching into shadows as if fighting the truth. The woman held up the device. "I erased your past, every moment, every lie you told yourself. James stumbled back, heart hammering, so hard it felt like it might burst. Who are you?" he whispered. The woman smiled, bitter, victorious. "I'm the real James, the one who lived, the one who made the choice." Whispers raced through the crowd. The boy creature's amber eyes flickered, not with fire, but fear. James's chest squeezed tight, breath hitching. Memories slammed into him. Flashes of sterile rooms, machines, cold faces without names. He collapsed backward, hands trembling. This was all fake? The woman nodded. Your entire life, your family, the boy, the man, fabrications to keep you sane. The crowd recoiled in shock. Phones dropped to concrete. The boy creature lunged forward, voice now a nightmare whisper. You erased us. You stole from yourself. Before the woman could react, the homeless man, no longer ragged, but sharp and clear, stepped into the light beside her. His voice cut through the chaos, calm but fierce. We're not memories. We're the truth you buried. James's mind shattered again. His hands clutched at his head, stomach twisting. Suddenly, the woman's confident mask cracked. Her voice grew desperate. You have to choose. Keep the lies or face what you erased. The creature boy reached out, eyes pleading. Remember me. Remember all of us. A sudden scream shattered the silence nearby. The crowd spun. A woman in the back collapsed, crying. James looked down at his hands. They were trembling, real, raw. But inside, something deeper stirred. The prickling feel of a life more complicated than lies or shadows. The city roared back to life around them. But James's world had broken open again. And this time, the question wasn't who he was. It was what he would do with a truth that wasn't his own to carry. And which version of James, if any, would survive what came next. James's hands shook as he stared at the letter. The cruel words scrawled like acid, blaming him for betrayals he buried deep. The crowd held its breath, eyes flicking between the ragged man, the sharp woman, and the frozen millionaire caught in the middle. His chest tightened like a fist. The boy clung to James's coat now, small fingers pressing like a lifeline. James glanced down, those searching eyes filled with fragile hope that cut deeper than money ever could. The homeless man stepped forward, voice low, urgent. You don't see it yet, but it's coming. The mask will shatter. Before James could ask what he meant, the world snapped. A sudden crack echoed, sharp and close. Heads whipped toward the sound. Then, the pavement beneath their feet split with a violent boom. A jagged line surged across the street, splitting concrete and tossing debris like toys. People screamed, stumbling back. Smoke curled from the crack, thick and choking. But that wasn't the worst. From the widening fissure, a cold, blue light spilled forth. It slithered upward, wrapping around the boy's legs, then his body. His skin glimmered, shifting, not just cracked porcelain anymore, but molten glass, glowing with a strange energy. James's heart slammed against his ribs. The boy's lips parted, a strange glow burning behind his eyes. Then, in a voice laced with something darker, deeper, "Enough lies." The woman gasped, stumbling backward. The homeless man's face twisted, this time not with rage, but fear. The crowd's eyes widened in horror as the boy's body trembled violently. And then, the ground beneath the crowd shattered too. From the crack, dozens of figures began to rise. Not just shadows, but impossible things. Thin, flickering shapes, some human, some twisted beyond recognition. Eyes frozen in silent screams, hands clawing at the air. The street became a nightmare come alive. James stumbled back, chest burning, stomach twisting. "No, no," he whispered. "What is this?" The figures moved toward the crowd, slow and certain, faces hollow, eyes empty. The woman reached for James, voice barely steady. "Their memories, the ones you buried, the lies you thought erased." James's breath hitched. The homeless man stepped forward sharply. "They're the past, the pain you kept locked away. But now, it's all coming back, and they want the truth." Suddenly, the boy's glowing eyes snapped open wide. His face cracked into a smile. Not a boy's smile. Cold, old, knowing. "I am the fracture you created, the consequence you ran from." James shook, body trembling, tears blurring his vision. The city's noise died, swallowed by the rising storm of ghosts. The crowd panicked, rushing back, pressing hard against the never-ending surge of memories bleeding into reality. And then, James's own reflection shattered. Not the man in the suit, but a twisted, broken mirror of himself. The real monster buried beneath the polished mask. The two Jameses locked eyes across the chaos, both terrified, both guilty. "Face it," the fractured James hissed, voice broken and low. "You made me." And amid the rising tide of phantoms, one horrific truth echoed far louder than the others. None of us were ever real. The boy, the man, the woman, all threads in a tangled web spun by a fractured mind trying to survive. James's world exploded in flames and shadows. And as the ghosts closed in, one question tore through the silence like fire. What happens when the nightmare is the only thing left to hold on to? The chaos pressed in, tight, suffocating. The ghosts hovered, flickering like broken memories, their hollow eyes fixed on James. His heartbeat thundered, wild, raw, and every breath burned like smoke in his lungs. Then, the street cracked open again, but this time, from the depths of the fissure, came not shadows, but silence, thick, heavy, as if the world itself was holding its breath. Nearby, the woman with electric blue eyes' lips moved, whispering words too soft to hear. James took a step back, chest tightening. Suddenly, a hand gripped his shoulder, strong, cold. He whipped around. It was the homeless man, the protector. But now his face was clear, unmasked, not ragged or wild, but calm, almost eerily so. His eyes locked on James with blazing intensity. "I need you to listen," he said, voice steady but shaking beneath the surface. Before James could answer, the crowd gasped as a sudden movement tore through them. From the twisting haze, the boy, no, the creature, collapsed. His glowing amber eyes faded into darkness. The tall figure shivered uncontrollably, then shrunk, really, until where a monstrous being had stood was now a tiny child again. The woman gasped, fingers covering her mouth, eyes wild with fear. The homeless man knelt beside the boy, his hands gentle as he cradled the child's face. Then, quietly, he looked up at James. "You need to know the truth." James's throat tightened. "I'm ready." A sudden burst of static snapped through the air. The blue-eyed woman dropped the device she held. It shattered on the cracked pavement. Her face shifted. Her calm mask cracked wide to reveal panic. "No, this isn't happening," she whispered. And then, out of nowhere, a sharp, cracking sound blew through the air. The crowd spun toward the darkened alley beside the square. A figure stepped forward. Tall, ominous, but not human. It was James, not the millionaire before them, not the broken man with two versions battling, but a smooth, unchanging version of himself. A man who looked exactly like the one next to the woman, but flawless, polished, and worse, empty. Eyes cold as ice. He moved with a calm precision that froze everyone. "Who the hell are you?" James demanded, voice breaking. The empty-faced double smiled, a slow, brutal smile. "I'm the real one," he said. "The one who never forgot." Gasps rolled through the crowd. The homeless man's grip tightened on the child. James stepped back, heart slamming so hard his chest hurt. This isn't me," he stammered. "It can't be." The other James said nothing, just stared. Then, with a quick, smooth motion, he reached into his pocket, pulled out another photo. James's eyes widened as he saw it. A picture of himself, the polished man, surrounded by unfamiliar faces. But in the background, faint and blurry, was a second figure. Not a man, a shadow. And then, the figure stepped forward from the photo. But it wasn't a shadow in the picture anymore. It was real. Right there, in the middle of the square. A third James, older, darker, eyes glowing red. "This is why you forgot," the figure hissed, voice dripping with rage. "You erased me, buried me so deep you could live your lie." James's knees nearly buckled as the crowd recoiled, whispers turning to screams. The blue-eyed woman stumbled forward, clutching James's arm tightly. "We thought he was gone." "But he was never gone," the homeless man whispered. "This is the piece you never faced." Before James could react, the older, red-eyed James lunged. The crowd gasped as the air split with a sharp crack. But instead of a blow, Before anyone could blink, the red-eyed figure grabbed the glowing boy-child by the collar. He pulled him close. The boy's amber eyes flickered, soft, vulnerable. Then, in a voice trembling with something almost human, the boy whispered, "Dad, I remember now. But you never really mattered." The real James swallowed hard. His legs trembled, and behind him, the perfect James smiled, cold, secret. The street fell silent again. Only one burning question remained, hanging in the cold air like smoke. If none of this was real, then who had James been protecting all along? And more terrifying still, which version of him was the nightmare? The perfect James smiled, cold, secret. The street fell silent again. Only one burning question hung in the cold air like smoke. If none of this was real, then who had James been protecting all along? And more terrifying still, which version of him was the nightmare? James swallowed hard, heart pounding like it wanted to break free. The polished man, the flawless fake, stood inches away, eyes sharp and unreadable. The red-eyed James snarled beside the glowing boy-child, tension cutting through the crowd like a knife blade. Then, a sudden crack fractured the thick air. Everyone froze. Time pulled tight, their breaths stalled. From beneath the cracked pavement, a deep, guttural voice rumbled, low and endless, shaking the bones of the earth beneath their feet. Enough lies. The ground trembled, and from the widening fissure, smoke billowed, thick and black, swallowing the crowd's confused gasps. Out of the shadows, a figure rose. Not human, not James, not any one of them. A colossal silhouette, limned in flickering blue light, pulsing and alive. Its skin shimmered like shifting glass, all jagged edges and hollow emptiness. It moved forward with impossible weight, crushing asphalt beneath. The crowd scattered, screaming, stumbling away. James stood rooted, frozen in terror. The being lifted a hand, tall, cracked fingers spreading, and its face came into focus. The face, James's face, but twisted and broken, fractured in ways that should not exist. The double smiled, wide and empty. "I am everything you feared." The boy-child flickered beside it, no longer glowing, now fused, a shadow cast from the towering figure. James's breath hitched, cold spreading like ice down his spine. "This is what you buried," the monstrous James said, voice thick with scorn. The blue-eyed woman gasped, staggering back. "No, it can't be," she whispered, clutching her heart. The homeless man stepped forward, voice cracking like dry leaves. "The fracture, the ghost you locked away." Suddenly, the crowd's world tilted. The monstrous James reached toward the trembling younger James. Slow, deliberate, and with a sharp slash, ripped a jagged piece of his face away. But it wasn't skin. It was a mask. Beneath, a hollow void stared back, empty and endless. James reeled, staggering as if the floor gave way. His hands flew up, trembling, touching his own face. But it shattered beneath his fingers. The truth blasted through. He was not a man. He was a construct. A fabricated ghost. The real James had never been here. Not really. A scream ripped through the crowd as people realized. This wasn't a fight between selves. It was a ruin of identity. James's world collapsed, and then a child's voice cut through the chaos, raw and pure. Because none of us are real. James whipped his head toward the boy shadow. His amber eyes glinted, cold, cruel. I was never your son. The boy stepped forward, no longer small but tall, towering beside the monster. I am the original, the real James. The crowd gasped. James's chest seized. Who made you? He whispered, voice cracking. The boy smiled, dark, terrible. A ghost born from your mind, yes. But the one you call real, that is the lie. The monstrous figure's eyes flared red. Behind it, whispers rose. He's the void inside you, the nightmare you can't escape. Suddenly, the device clasped by the blue-eyed woman cracked, and a pulse of light shot upward, erasing the monstrous figure and the boy. When the light faded, James was alone. His hands clutched empty air. The crowd blinked, confused, shaken. Then a chilling new voice broke the silence. Not from any of the figures. From inside James himself. A voice, fractured and deep. You don't protect who you think. You protect nothing. James stumbled back, his reflection shattered again, this time from the glass windows behind. And staring back at him was nobody, no face, only blank. The question slammed into the cold air. If the nightmare isn't outside yourself, then what have you really been fighting all along? And with that, the city held its breath, waiting for an answer that might never come. James staggered back, chest heaving, the cold air biting deep as the monstrous figure dissolved into a shower of shards, light fading into nothing. The glowing boy-child shrank beside him, breath ragged, eyes still flickering with that cruel amber spark. Silence slammed down. The crowd's panic hung frozen like frost. The woman with fierce blue eyes stepped forward, trembling, voice raw. This ends now. Her grip on the shattered device tightened, broken pieces crunching beneath her fingers. James's hands still shook, sweat chilling on his skin. His mind reeled. What had been real? What was fake? What nightmare was still crawling under his skin? The homeless man knelt by the boy, steadying him. "It's over," he said softly, but his eyes held a storm. "You have to believe that." James met the boy's gaze, the fragile hope in those searching eyes twisting something inside him. Something raw, aching, real. The kind of hope that refuses to die, no matter how deep you bury it. The crowd began to stir, whispers rippling like distant thunder. Some faces showed pity, others doubt. A few wore the tired marks of people who'd just witnessed something too heavy to carry. James took a deep breath, ragged and uneven. The woman's gaze locked with his. She nodded, as if sharing a silent truce, a fragile understanding born from the rubble. The boy's fingers closed around James's coat again, tighter this time. "Remember," he whispered, voice softer now, almost like a plea. James knelt slowly. The lump in his throat was a weight pulling him under. "I'm trying," he said, voice breaking. Around them, the city held its breath, cars idling, footsteps pausing, a cold wind stirring leaves like ghosts on the sidewalk. James looked past the chaos, past the shattered realities. He didn't have the answers, maybe never would. But one thing was clear. Whatever this was, broken memories, fractured souls, or shadows of the mind, it had claimed its toll. Yet somewhere beneath the ruin, a spark still burned. James stood, shaky but unbroken. He glanced at the boy, then at the ragged man who was no longer just a protector, but something whole. The woman watched too, no longer an enemy, but a witness. The streets began to pulse with life again. But deep inside James, a question echoed, relentless and cold. If the nightmare is the only thing left to hold on to, then who is really in control? That answer wasn't coming yet. For now, James walked away from the fracture in the pavement, hands trembling but heart beating, ready for whatever came next. And somewhere, in the shifting shadows, the story was far from over. Stop. Before you move on, don't miss what's coming next. You need to subscribe now, right this second, so you don't miss a single exclusive story dropped only here. Smash that like button right now. Your clicks feed the algorithm. It's how this channel stays alive and bringing you the best. Flood the comments with your reactions and wild theories about this ending. I want to know what you think right now. And do not wait even one more second to share this video. Send it to at least 5 friends who'll flip over how this all wraps up. Only true fans get how crucial your support is. So make it count. Do it now.